Welcome to the MEXpreneurs Podcast, the podcast about the stories of Mexican tech startup founders who are building world-class, fast-growing companies and having a positive impact at a large scale. My name is Sergio Chavez. I'm a Mexican based in Germany, a tech startup founder, executive, and mentor, and your host. Welcome everyone to the first episode of the MEXpreneurs Podcast. I am Sergio Chavez, your host, and I have a special guest with me today, my colleague Kattya Cruz. Kattya, welcome.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
And thank you for accepting to be here in this first episode. But Kattya, please explain us briefly who is Kattya Cruz.
How can I explain myself? Who's Kattya? I will say that it's a Mexican that has been coming here to Germany with a dream and learned to be resilient, had learned how to find solutions regardless whatever it happens. And basically, my story here in Germany starts when I decide to come with my family business, that it's a biotechnology company, that its name is BioTech. We're in Mexico, founded, and all the innovation come from Mexico. And coming to Germany, to a country that they are actually good on biotech, it was like a big step because now we were coming to show the Germans how to improve this field of biotechnology. So it was a great journey, a lot of lessons learned, not just in the work field or the professional field, but I think also in the personal field, because here I learned that, first of all, for entrepreneurship, you need to be sometimes maybe a little naive. Don't let people tell you that it's not possible, or try not to listen that much, because that's the spirit of an entrepreneur, to just jump sometimes to the cold water, not thinking about it, and kind of like trusting yourself, the world or universe, whoever you want to trust, for that idea that you have and that it's the one that is moving you, even though that maybe at the beginning it's not giving money and you realize that money it's not the only thing that should move you, right? I think that that's how I came to Germany. And even though that this part of the biotechnology, let's say, had a small bump because we're right now no longer in Germany, that doesn't mean that we're not coming back. A lot of things came out, new patents, new food matrices that now they're in the market in Mexico, and that they will help us to come back. And of course, this experience helped me also to be an entrepreneur in the social area with an association that it's Hamburg Mexico V. Basically, I think that Germany was my ticket to entrepreneurship, now that I think of it.
We want to talk today in this first episode about what's MEXpreneurs, what this is all about, what are our listeners going to take out of these, and by following us and actively participating. But I always should say that for me, that conversation that we had last year in Hamburg when we met in person was one of the multiple triggers that led us to start MEXpreneurs, because I think hearing the stories of entrepreneurs like you that have gone into the arena of entrepreneurship, starting their own business and going through the ups and downs that implies, and that are also operating at a world-class level. No, you were mentioned just a moment ago that the technology that you develop in Mexico brought into Germany, basically co-developing it with German professionals, like that's huge. No? Like you're playing in the big leagues of biotech.
Yeah, exactly. The patents are not just in Mexico; they're here in the whole European unit. So yeah, it's playing, like you say, the big leagues.
I think that was for me one of those aha moments where I said, like, Kattya is here in Germany. There are also some fantastic entrepreneurs, of course, in Mexico, in US, in the UK, Asia. Like after that conversation that we had, like I started becoming a little bit more sensitive about like Mexicans spread over the globe that are doing some great things in different spaces, whether it's biotech, software, agri-tech, fintech, and so forth, that I think it's just those ideas are worth spreading, worth sharing, and at least becoming aware that exists, no? Because I think we're all scattered all over the globe, but with little connection between each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also sometimes hearing about those kinds of stories make you feel like, okay, then I'm not the only one. So there's somebody else, maybe in another country, actually facing the same challenges, or maybe exactly not the same, but something very similar. And that I think makes you in a some way how also say like, okay, let's keep on forward. I mean, it's possible. It's I'm sure that I'm gonna make it. You know, sometimes you just need that story also to tell you, don't worry, it's gonna be fine. And if it's not fine, we're strong enough to come back into our food and start over.
100%. So let's talk about MEXpreneurs, Kattya. You were one of the big inspirations behind starting this project, but why don't we share a little bit more with our listeners what this is about?
Yeah. For example, Sergio, you just said that, yeah, some of the stories are part of the reason why we are starting this podcast. But if you will say, what is Mexpreneurs for you? What will you say? And what will you want that our listeners think about Mexpreneurs?
I would start first what brings us together. And I think that's been part of the conversations that we had in the past days with the first joiners of MEXpreneurs, which is the fact that what brings us all together is the fact that we all love Mexico, despite the fact that we're scattered across the globe. We all have a close professional and personal connection to Mexico. The second one is that we're all involved in some shape or form with entrepreneurship, primarily with startups, so fast-growing companies that have, let's say, big global ambitions to become at one point, ideally, global corporations that can have a big impact. And I think the third element is also that love for technology, like using technology as an enabler to reach more people, to have a bigger impact at a larger scale. And I think that intersection of Mexico, startups, technology is ultimately where MEXpreneurs sits. I think these, like where I would love these to be in a few years, is really these global network of Mexican tech startup founders who know each other, who collaborate with each other, and who are really co-creating opportunities between them. And also for those that are coming behind them, I think there's also a great generation of aspiring entrepreneurs that, again, spread all over the globe, that probably either don't have the idea, or if they have the idea, they probably don't know how to materialize it. If they probably don't already know how to materialize it, probably they just don't have the courage at some point just to go for it. And I think by sharing all these different stories, by creating this global network, I think we can enable each other and help each other in some way. Also giving back to Mexico, those of us that are abroad, but also to have a significant impact in our host countries where we're based. No? I think, for example, what you were doing here with Curago, in working together with German engineers, German scientists, bringing new technology to them, that's also an incredible achievement. And that's something that I think will be great if that flourishes and becomes more of an enduring situation.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think that you just mentioned a topic that it's very, very important, right? It's not just only the stories that happen, that they're happening, but the ones that they're coming on. For those persons that they might not feel so secure, or that they are still not making the step, I think that that's something also about what's not just right now and MEXpreneurs, but it's what we want to become, right? We want also maybe with this podcast help those people to spread the word. And well, you never know. Who will imagine that we will met because of the whole Curago story and so on? And look at now. I mean, we're doing this project together, but yeah, you never know who it's listening, right?
And I think that there's an element of serendipity in all of these. No? I think one of the big expectations, at least I would say for me, is that this creates those moments of serendipity for those of us that are involved. Because I've seen this, at least for me personally in my career, I think I've been personally very fortunate to be at many points, like at the right time, at the right place with the right people. And what I've also come to realize is that it doesn't happen by chance. That happens only when you're engaged, only when you're active, no? Only when you're talking to people. It doesn't come by just sitting in the couch and praying and hoping that things will come to you, but by being active. That's where these serendipity hits in the most, I would say, unexpected ways. No? And as you mentioned, like we don't know who's going to be listening. We don't know who these podcasts going to land with, how we're going to start disseminating and sharing it across our networks. But I think my expectation with these, we will be co-creating some great opportunities, especially to support the founders that are, in my view, in the center of what we're doing with MEXpreneurs. No? Because again, I don't think we're talking here about, let's say, bringing professionals with a big job title, working at a big corporate who have achieved a lot of accolades. But I think it's about really highlighting the stories of those that are really grinding, that are trying to build a business, that have already responsibility availability of people, customers, partners, and really put them at the forefront of what we're doing and give them all the support that they need. Because I think you've seen it, I've seen it myself, that to make a startup a success, you need all the help possible from all different directions.
No, for sure. And I mean, and at the end of the day, also, we have been talking about, you need to be resilient, as a matter of fact. And I think that something that you learn from experience and independently of entrepreneurship or not, you can always learn about those stories, that they are real stories, but that they are so crazy that you can make a movie out of them. I mean, to be honest, sometimes there are some stories that you say like, oh my God, like how did that happen? How did things end up like that? In the positive and even in the, let's not call it negative way, but on the bumped side or moments, because it's always going to come something positive. I mean, for whoever it's going to listen to your story, whoever is going to learn about it, or even for yourself, you never know, again, who will be listening. And at the end of the day, I think that it's part of the mission of MEXpreneurs, right?
100%. And I think everyone, like each of the founders that we will be interviewing in this podcast, is a great example of resilience, is a great example of reinvention. No? I think in all of the conversations that we've had so far, like I think nobody has had a linear path. No? Like, okay, you started in Mexico, you studied, or I don't know, you were born somewhere else, but from a Mexican family, and then like everything has gone according to plan. Like I think none of them have that linear path. Like everyone had some ups and downs, and then two steps back, one forward, and then a circle in between. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. Like even when I think about, like in my case, that I moved from Mexico to Germany, I think I've had a relatively stable path. But when you hear some other stories, like it's crazy. No? Like they've gone through different countries, reinvented themselves, landed in a net new industry, despite the fact that they didn't even have the qualifications. But there was just like this big dream, this big mission, this big calling, however you want to call it, and they just gone for it. And that's, I think, remarkable. No? And of course, it's not exclusive from Mexicans. No? There's people from other nationalities that have followed a similar path. But I think for us as Mexicans being abroad, and also I think something that is important to highlight, which not a lot of people knows, is the fact that actually Mexico has, after India, the second largest diaspora worldwide. No? So based on the official statistics, there's more than 12 million Mexicans that have gone abroad and emigrated. That's without counting those that are unofficially also abroad, those that are, let's say, Mexican American, Mexican German, Mexican Brazilian, or whatever. No? So the number is just like, just cannot foresee how big it is, but the amount of Mexicans out there, it's just huge. So that means that the potential that we have through this project to reach and show the richness of all of these Mexicans that are scattered all across the globe and building some great companies, which are also operating similar to you at a world-class level. I think the opportunity is there. No? And hopefully with MEXpreneurs, we will create that magnet, that single meeting point for all of us to start getting together and start collaborating in some shape or form.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you kind of like gave us some little spoilers, which is great because I think that the people, that's what they want to hear. So real stories with real ups and downs and funny moments and moments that they were not funny at the beginning, maybe, but later on will come funny. But if you can tell me just also a little bit more about the team, because at the end of the day, MEXpreneurs, it's also a startup, let's call it like that, or a dream that we're kind of like following. And I think that everyone deserves their spotlight. So tell me a little bit about the team that it's behind.
The team behind MEXpreneurs, that's important because, of course, our listeners are going to hear a lot about me in each of the episodes. But really behind MEXpreneurs, there's a wider team. And this is all people that I've personally had the privilege to meet at different points of life. Some of them go all the way back to university in Mexico, such as Pamela, who's our graphic designer, such as Jose Garcia, Pepe, who's also a great friend of mine from university. And then there's others that I've gotten the opportunity to meet in my career in Mexico, like, for example, our patrons, Claudia, Edgar, and others like we probably met in the last couple of months. No? So, for example, Antonio, also one of our patrons. Well, you and I know each other already for a couple of years, but this is all incredible people, incredible Mexican professionals that some of them have stayed in Mexico, some of them have gone abroad. I think in general, built great careers in different disciplines. But in general, I think what connects us is indeed that love for Mexico, for startups, for technology, and the fact that I think we're all in between our 30s and 40s. That's what I've also realized. I think we're all in this stage of life where we're not so young, but we're also not that old.
Hey, we will be forever young. Come on.
That's good. It's a mentality thing. It doesn't have to do anything with age.
Exactly.
But I think we're all in this stage where we collect some great experience and we're that in give first mode. No? Like, okay, let's contribute. Let's try to bring this community together. Of course, each of us has our own aspirations and dreams in terms of what we want to achieve next. But I think in general, we all have built a track record and each of us also have built certain mastery in our disciplines, like you in marketing, Pamela in design, Rocio also in sales and marketing, go to market, Valeria on the audio and actually the company that she launched. And then our patrons, Adonai, Antonio, Claudia, Edgar, Andres, Pepe, Paco, all of them, I think, have, and Omar, no? They all have built great expertise in a domain. They're working for great companies. But at the end of the day, we're all in this same mentality of giving back, giving first. And again, creating that, generating that serendipity that I think we just don't know where this is going to take us. And I think that's
Exactly.
part what I think keeps us all very excited about starting these new projects.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's be honest. If at the end of the day this comes to something great, we will like that our movie will be very entertaining, right? We have to create content about this project and so on. And for example, something that maybe there are some people that they're gonna ask for, it's okay, let's say I listen to the podcast, I actually got inspired, I start the pattern and so on. And maybe I saw as MEXpreneurs as a great place where I could shout to the world, well, I have this startup made. This is what I'm doing. Will our listeners one day be able to participate maybe on the other side?
100%. And that's actually the reason why I think we're pursuing different activities in parallel. Of course, as part of the podcast, we will be interviewing and giving the spotlight to different startups. But since we're going to be introducing a new startup every 2 weeks, so every week we're going to have a new episode. But in reality, each startup we will introduce will have 2 episodes. So we will hear about the same startup in 2 weeks in a row. At the end of the day, we're talking that within a year, we're going to be able to interview about 20 different startups. So we're not going to be able to give the spotlight to each and every one. But what we do want, and that's of course an invitation to all of those of you who are listening, if you're already starting a business, if you're starting a company, reach out. We're in the process of building these global database, Mexican tech startup founders who are building something. We want to at least know who's doing what, give also that exposure. So for that purpose, we've launched a website, we've launched our social media. We want to at least be able to show to the world who are all of these Mexican tech startup founders who are out there, and also allow the people to go and see what they're doing. No? So
Yep.
despite the fact that we're just going to have some limited slots, at least at the beginning in the podcast, we do want to create that global database of Mexican tech startup founders, give them also visibility through the website and through different activities that we will be doing. And of course, also those that are just thinking about starting something, the primary invitation is just to follow, to engage. And I'm sure, like, of course, we cannot do everything, no? Because also I think what's important to highlight is that all of us that are working in these, we're doing these on top of our daily jobs, on top of our companies, on top of our families. So we need to be very focused as it is in entrepreneurship. Like we cannot do everything at the same time. So, but definitely like everyone who wants to engage, who can contribute, because also those of us that are listening that are not necessarily entrepreneurs themselves, but let's say they work at a company, but they do in some shape or form provide products and services to startups, also feel free to reach out. Like again, startup founders need all of the support required to make their company successful. And for these startup community that we're building, founders are at the heart of it. So anyone that is willing to contribute, to help, is more than welcome. It's going to be a little bit messy. I'm not going to promise that it's going to be entirely smooth and bulletproof. We're going to make our best, all of those, you and I and the rest of the team who are involved, to make these as seamless as possible for everyone. But that's also part of the entrepreneurial journey, like manage these chaos in an orderly way and try to bring all these parties together to, again, ultimately support the founders and help them succeed in their ventures.
Exactly. And I mean, it's let's just kind of like wrap it up because I mean, to be honest, you're going to have a lot of fun with the stories. You're going to also learn about us little by little as the podcast is coming. But just really quick, Sergio, how will you say that MEXpreneurs it is or it's helping? I mean, maybe just to make it myself a little bit more clear, if you ask me how can I describe it, I think that Mexpreneur should be that kind of mentality that we have with this phrase of Mex, I can. So I think that it's quite something about Mexpreneurs. It's showing how it's possible to make it and not think that because we're Mexicans, the opportunities are not there. It might be harder. Yeah, it could be, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible, right? So, what will be your mind?
I think that with every story, with every founder that we're going to have here in the podcast, again, we're going to show that it is possible. No, the so famous "si se puede," no,
Yeah,
that it is possible. As you mentioned, it might be more difficult depending on your starting point. No? If you're in Mexico, in a specific town, in a specific city, less connected, with less references, again, it might be a little bit more difficult, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible. No? And I think all of the founders that we have here are a testament that it is possible. It might mean that you need to move countries. It might mean you need to go into a new organization. It might mean that you need to change your profession, no? Or reinvent yourself. But if you have a big mission, a big dream, a big something that is moving you, that you believe is going to have a positive impact, like I think there's ways of doing that. And again, each and every founder that we're going to have here is a testament of that.
exactly. And I mean, I really believe that people is going to have a lot of fun with this adventure that we're all starting on, that its name it's now Mexpreneurs. So, I mean, from my part, I think that the only thing that it's left is to tell the people to keep on tune, to listen to all these stories. And also, I mean, please, if you have any question or something, go to our social media, ask. The people that it's behind these stories are going to also be in a some way how connected. So like we say, you never know who it's listening, and maybe part of this great story will also come from Mexpreneur's side.
Please engage. So I think our biggest ask is engage, comment, share, reshare. And I think, as you mentioned, Kattya, I think these will just get richer, bigger, better, thanks to the contributions from everyone out there who's listening at us and giving us their time to follow what we're doing.
Well, then I think that we can wrap it up and tell the people to, well, listen to us on our next episode.
Indeed, we have some great things coming up. So stay tuned.
Perfect. Then see you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. And thanks to you for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe via your favorite podcast app to be notified about new episodes and share with us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. Thank you also to the MEXpreneurs team, Valeria Morel, Hector Barragan from Hyper Voltage, Francisco Jaimes, Pamela Elizalde, Kattya Cruz, Rocío Marroquín. I am Sergio Chavez. See you next time.